Every month, there's a moment where you look at your bank balance and wonder how it happened again. You paid what you were supposed to pay. You avoided obvious mistakes. You didn't go on a shopping spree. And yet, somehow, paying your bills still feels impossible. Not dramatic impossible, just quietly exhausting. It's like no matter how careful you are, the numbers never fully work in your favor. If that's your reality, the first thing you need to hear is this: you're not irresponsible. You're not bad with money. Not imagining how hard this feels. In a moment, I'll explain why this feeling shows up even when you're doing what you were told was the right thing. Start with the paycheck. It arrives, and for a brief moment, there's relief, not excitement. Relief. You check the balance and start mentally assigning money to bills that are already waiting. Rent or the mortgage, car payment, insurance, utilities, groceries, credit cards, student loans. Medical bills that don't follow a predictable schedule. Before you've had time to think, most of your income already belongs to someone else. Then life adds something small. A prescription, a car issue, a higher utility bill than expected, a few $100s that wipes out whatever space you thought you had. Now you're not thinking about progress, you're thinking about survival. The cycle repeats, month after month, and it wears people down. Not because they're careless, but because the system leaves very little margin. In a moment, I'll explain why being careful alone doesn't solve this anymore. For a long time, paying your bills on time was a sign that you were doing okay. Full-time work usually meant stability. Today, full-time work often just means keeping up. Housing takes a larger share of income than it used to. Transportation costs more. Insurance premiums rise quietly year after year. Healthcare expenses show up unexpectedly. And wages haven't kept pace with all of that. When most of your income is locked into fixed costs, flexibility disappears. And without flexibility, every small problem feels huge. This is why budgeting can feel frustrating. Budgeting helps you see the numbers clearly, but it can't create breathing room when everything is already committed. You can be disciplined and still feel trapped. Now let's talk about credit cards, because they quietly sit at the center of this problem. Credit cards often start as a solution. They help smooth gaps. They help handle emergencies. They help you stay afloat when costs rise faster than pay. At first, they feel helpful and responsible, but over time, they add pressure. Most credit cards today carry interest rates in the 20 to 30% range. That interest doesn't feel aggressive, doesn't announce itself, just quietly works in the background. Here's a simple example. If you carry a $2,000 balance at 25% interest, you're paying about $500 a year just in interest. That money doesn't reduce your balance. It doesn't move you forward. It simply keeps you where you are. You can pay every minimum payment on time and still feel like nothing is changing. That's not a motivation problem. That's math. This is where many people start feeling defeated because they're doing what they were told was responsible, but the results don't match the effort. Then credit scores enter the picture, which makes everything feel even more personal. Your credit score isn't measuring how hard you try, it's measuring risk. One of the largest parts of that score is payment history, which makes up roughly 1/3 of the total. Paying on time matters because late payments signal instability, and even a single late payment can hurt more than people expect. But here's the confusing part. Payment history mostly protects you from damage. It doesn't automatically improve your score if other risk signals remain high. Another major factor is credit utilization, which simply means how much of your available credit you're using. If you have a $5,000 credit limit and you're using $4,000, that's 80% utilization. Even with perfect payments, that level of usage can keep your score from improving. This is why people feel stuck while doing the right things. They're preventing things from getting worse, but they're not yet creating conditions for progress. In a few minutes, I'll explain why small changes here can matter more than people expect, even without a raise. Now think about what people usually do when paying bills feels impossible. They try to work more. Extra shifts, overtime, side hours. And sometimes that helps for a short while. But often, it doesn't change the underlying feeling. Why? Because fixed costs don't scale down. And small increases in income are often absorbed by taxes, delayed expenses, or things you've been forced to postpone. So you work more, feel more tired, and still feel stuck. This is where people make choices that feel logical under pressure. They rely more on credit to stay afloat. They delay looking closely at their finances because it feels overwhelming. They cut small expenses aggressively while ignoring the bigger forces creating the stress. None of this means you're bad with money. These are normal responses to pressure. But this is also where people accidentally make things worse. For example, many people focus only on paying bills on time and assume that's enough. Paying on time matters, but it doesn't reduce balances or interest. Others chase fast money ideas because they're desperate for relief, only to end up disappointed or burned. Later, I'll explain what actually helps instead, without hype or shortcuts. Before that, there's an important shift to make. Paying bills feeling impossible isn't always a spending problem. It's often a margin problem. Margin doesn't mean wealth. It means breathing room, enough space that one unexpected expense doesn't derail everything. Once you see that, the goal changes. It's no longer about trying harder. It's about creating margins slowly and deliberately. Return to credit scores for a moment, because this is where small shifts can create real change. Payment history matters because it shows consistency. Late payments hurt because they signal risk, which is why one missed payment can cause a noticeable drop. Utilization matters because it shows dependency. Lower balances signal less risk, even if income hasn't changed. Here's another simple scenario. If you're using $4,000 out of a $5,000 limit, your utilization is 80%. If you reduce that balance to $3,000, your utilization drops to 60%. That single change can have more impact on your score than months of perfect payments alone. This is why progress often feels invisible until something finally shifts. Interest slows everything down, which makes patience harder. This combination is why so many Americans feel like paying their bills is impossible, even when they're doing what they were told was right. Now, let's talk about income in a realistic way. Being careful can only go so far when costs keep rising. At some point, income flexibility matters more than willpower. It doesn't mean chasing risky schemes or working nonstop. It means choosing slow, predictable ways to bring in extra money without burning out. This is where boring income wins. Gig work works because it's flexible and immediate. Freelancing works because skills compound over time. Simple service-based work works because demand stays steady. These options aren't exciting, but they're controllable. Fast money usually backfires because it depends on hype, timing, or luck. Slow money works because it's steady and boring. You don't need 5 income streams. You need one realistic option that fits your life. Let's make this practical. Today, the goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Look at where your money is already committed. Identify fixed costs. Notice which debt has the highest interest. Avoid adding new balances if you can. That alone reduces mental pressure. This week, focus on protection. Automate minimum payments so nothing slips. Look for small opportunities to reduce utilization even slightly. Progress doesn't need to be dramatic to matter. This month, focus on margin. One realistic income move. One boring, predictable step that creates breathing room. That breathing room is what makes everything else easier. If paying your bills still feels impossible, it doesn't mean you failed. It means modern financial life is tight, and no one explained it clearly. Financial repair is slow. It doesn't feel exciting, but it is possible. And once you understand what's really happening, you stop fighting yourself and start working with reality instead. There's more clarity ahead. We'll take it one piece at a time.